Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight is Dr. Eliad Peretz. He is a NASA scientist and the deputy PI on the Landolt mission at George Mason University. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So we have been doing a series on space and George Mason University's involvement in various programs. Dr. Hina Kazmi she and I did a show early on. She's done a series of specials, and this has brought us to this show where we really want to talk about the Landolt mission, about the partnership between NASA and George Mason University, and the role that academia has in helping further the goals of the space program. So give us a little bit of background about how you came to this particular project.
Yeah, so both me and Professor Peter Platchen, who is the principal investigator for this mission, met about, I would say, 5 years ago today, and came up together with an idea to send a star to the night sky. And you kind of can ask yourself, like, why do they need another star? There are so many stars in the sky. And the answer is that if you fully understand how bright a star is, then you are able to study some of the most interesting phenomena in the night sky, including dark energy and dark matter. Now, everybody asks, why is that? What is dark matter? What is dark energy? And it's, if you have to kind of put it in words, it's the thing that we cannot see, but we can see its influences on the universe, on galaxies, on stars. And it's probably the thing that flows through us and passes through Earth and interacts with us in different ways. So there is so much to discover in that space of knowledge that we decided to launch the first star to the night sky to help us measure that phenomena in a better way. So that's a little bit about how the mission Landolt started. Of course, NASA has a variety of space missions. We have missions that go to the moon, missions that go to Mars, some goes to other planets, some observe the universe, like the James Webb Space Telescope or the Roman Space Telescope that would launch soon. But we are inside a very unique program that is called Pioneers. It's a great name for this kind of mission. And what it allows you to do, it allows you to give the management, give the leadership and the ownership of the NASA space mission to a university or a PI-led mission with a university. And that gives them the ability to develop the talent that they need to run a space mission. It gives them the ability to develop the infrastructure that they need to develop other space technologies that would be needed in the future, not just for science, but also for advancement of technology, for advancement of day-to-day life. So it's a really unique moment, and I'm so happy. I remember the day, I think it was July 2024, and both me and Peter were waiting on the line to hear about the news, and we were both crying at the same time. So exciting times for George Mason University and NASA and the Landolt mission.
It is. And when we say deputy PI, that's principal investigator, right? So
Yes.
That's a particular role, right? So the two of you are working together. This is a specific mission. But the relationship with George Mason University, which is a state university, it's also R1 Research University, one of only 131 in the country. So the partnership between NASA and George Mason is also part of a much broader goal that the university has itself for establishing a space institute. So how does this factor in the goals of NASA with the goals of the university to be part of establishing greater research and greater investment in space?
Yeah, so it actually interacts in different ways with the agency. One would be the advancement and collaboration together with industry. So as a good example, the bus or the spacecraft that is being built is a collaboration between George Mason University and a commercial entity. So that allows the introduction of industry to academia, academia to industry, and make those connections that typically take years to develop and accelerate them and bring them into launch within 3 to 5 years. So that's one, I would say, path in which we see those things happen. The second one is we see the investment that are being put by GMU, specifically the technical investment, so the clean rooms, the shakers, the vacuum chambers, all those things that you need to have in place in order to test and qualify things before they go to space are being put in place. And while they're being used for the Landolt mission, What you can actually imagine is that for the next person who wants to fly something that produces more energy or compute things in space or does Earth observations after wildlife, all of that infrastructure would be in place to support those potential future endeavors as well. So in many ways, what you're seeing is that the Landolt mission is the trigger in some way to a larger readiness and posture of the university and increasing their capabilities and talent to make sure that they can step into the arena with the technologies to come.
So you make a good point about building the infrastructure. So you invest a lot of money in building the infrastructure, all the technical things that you need. But let's talk about how you build the talent force. Where does your workforce come from? And who are the students and the people we hope choose science, first of all, and space specifically is what they want to pursue? Because don't we need a lot of people in order to further the mission of both NASA and the United States and academia?
Yeah, so a typical misconception is that space is only for scientists and engineers. And I can tell you as someone who lived in the system for many years now, that we need all of all. We need great project managers. We need great communicators. We also need great scientists and engineers, but we also need to have people who are good with quality assurance. So there are so many facets to a space mission. It's not just the technical, it's not just the science. So all of those unique combinations of traits or talents that people need to have to make sure that a space mission is successful takes a lot of time to develop, whether it's people who are great communicators, know how to write well, know how to conceive an idea, how to make sure that you can transfer a message and make sure that you bring value to the nation, whether it's a financial value, whether it's a scientific value, whether it's an engineering value. So a good example is the Landolt mission is going to be pioneering the deployment of lasers in space. Wow. And we know that laser communication is...
Space lasers. We've heard a lot about it. Most of it maybe not accurate. So we need people to help us understand what is real about space lasers, yes?
Yeah, sure. So we use space laser mostly today for communication. And the reason for that is because all of the means of communication we use today are oversubscribed and overutilized. Right. And if we want to also get information in a more denser form, let's say you want larger files or real-time video for the moon, you really have to move to the next technology, which in our case is laser communication. So a good example would be, for those of you who've seen the SLS or the Artemis II launch, we received those images live by laser communication. And at George Mason, we actually developed the building block that make those lasers. So specifically, the boards, the fibers, putting them together, qualifying them for space. Now, the next question is to ask what else this could be used for. And the answer is there are probably dozens of visualizations that you can think and come up with in order to make sure it moves forward. So I'm super excited about that, specifically of the College of Engineering pushing that front, as well as the College of Science pushing the science front at the same time. We have an entire team that does social media, and it's super important. Not just to cover your day-to-day activities, but also to make sure that the public is aware of the opportunities it has, right? You can come and join the mission. You can actually be an observer of the spacecraft and help us measure citizen science. Or you can decide that you're a commercial company and you have a need of a specific technology element, so now you know who to talk to, right? So those are many examples in which the Landolt mission is shifting and changing the conversation within George Mason, and I'm really excited about the new initiative that just came out of George Mason University for many reasons. One is you'll notice that the initiative is totally multidisciplinary. So we see people from policy, we see people from the sciences, we see people from law. So all those different domains come together are really what we need to conquer the next frontier, which is space. It is still the next frontier. I know we landed on the moon a long time ago,
but it's still the frontier. And again, we talked about policy in the very first show we did, and the fact that policy seems to lag behind the deployment of technology. Like we invent things, we do things, and then we try to figure out how we're going to put policy around that. And space and science also is vast because other countries are also working on this. So it's not like just the United States and just NASA is investing in the scientific strides forward. Other countries are as well. So strategically, the investment that this country is making through these kinds of programs benefits benefits our country.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And in fact, it's a part of our mandate. So we at NASA, among the other duties we have a duty to advance the U.S. endeavor, whether it's industry, whether it's academia. So it's a part of what we do. I'm super excited about what comes next for space, because typically when people think about space, they think about, oh, it helps me with the GPS on my phone, or it helps me with my text messages, or with my data if I use some service from space. And those are well-established things, but when you look down the horizon, you start seeing the giants of the future coming up. So a good example is production of energy in space. Another good example is computation. So there's a lot of talk about data centers in space, right? There are many different types of utilizations in Earth observations. If you want to follow wildlife, is one example, or if you want to follow wildfires, that's another example.
Wildfires, yep.
Tornadoes, or whatever the of the day.
Extreme weather events.
Yeah, I would say any topic of interest. So a good example is rare earth materials and minerals. Yeah. Is another example. So really, the entire fleet of Earth observing spacecraft, the endeavor, not just NASA, industry, the U.S. economy, could benefit from better leveraging those. And we see different companies doing that as well. So I'm super excited about that.
And it's interesting, too, because space is almost like opening another window to look back on our planet, right? We put things in space so that we can better see the planet we're actually living on, which when you think about 100 years ago, that was not even conceived of, really. It wasn't. So the fact that we can even think in these terms is quite remarkable.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a good way to think about it is when you're trying to observe tornadoes in the ocean. So when you observe from space, you can actually do a trajectory, a path estimation of, okay, it's going to hit Florida at that direction or a different state, or depends on the day or the month. And our ability to do that is very much informed by our ability to observe at those scales, and also use all of the science talent and the engineering and the computing and everything that is needed to do that. Same goes for industrial benefits. If you want to measure the height of oil in some place and you want to do a trade with somewhere else and you want to understand how that could benefit the U.S. economy, so that's another way to do that. So there are so many facets, and as you go up and up and up, you get the holistic picture of Earth.
Which is why we need to care about what we're doing in space and about the partnership and the mission. We are going to go to a break, but we are going to be back in a few more moments to explore a little bit more about space and what it means.
I do not have guns at home.
I feel really safe and secure having a gun in the house.
Judge, my opponent is completely disregarding almost half of my arguments which I responded to.
Communities must step up
Laws
and
alone
protest
cannot
against this
stop a
normalization.
bullet.
Our community must educate and push back against all that violence.
Every individual needs to be aware of what they can do to keep kids safe.
I completely disagree.
I'm not gonna listen to points that are completely ridiculous.
Point of inquiry. Do you guys even realize that the #1 killer of children and teens are gun injuries? Why are we fighting about this?
We have a serious problem in this country.
There is no adult in this earth that wants children to die.
I worry for my kids.
Let me tell you about the toughest guy on earth. He does the work of 2 jobs, but only gets paid for one. He's tough enough to feed the man that gave him a lifetime of nourishment. He has the crazy strength to lift the man that raised him up without even flinching. That's right. No employee of the month bonus check here. This guy, no. This warrior will always be by his father's side, even if his dad will hardly remember. Good luck finding a gym to train for that. If this guy isn't the toughest guy on the planet, then I don't know who is. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining us tonight is Dr. Eliad Peretz, and he is a NASA research scientist who is working on the Landolt mission, which is a collaboration with George Mason University. And so we were talking before about how we develop the talent necessary to move not just missions forward, but the whole idea of space science. And while people might think this is something in the future, and there is a future industry that is enormous, it is something that's here right now. And so this collaboration with George Mason University is really setting up how we move forward so that we are developing not just the infrastructure, but the people necessary to accomplish what it is NASA has determined is our trajectory forward as a country into space as an industry.
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is kind of shake yourself for a moment. And I would say space is for everybody. Like if you think I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, kind of shake it off yourself and just ask yourself, is there something interesting? Is there something that I'm passionate about? For example, am I passionate about tracking movement of populations across urban zones? Let's say you're an architect, or you are interested in studying how wildlife migrate between cities, or whatever the topic that you have in your head. You are an economist and you're trying to understand how trades works across the nation. There is a place for you in space, right? I would say something even kind of larger. I've seen so many ads for positions in the space sector that are just standing still because people are just not making the first step.
Right.
So
people are intimidated because we tell ourselves stories about who a scientist is. Like, you're a scientist, I'm not a scientist. So how could there be a role for me to have in the space industry because I'm not a scientist? But I am a policymaker. I am in local government. I work in an industry that influences the development of public policy. So what I think we need people to understand is that we need everyone.
Yes, and space is the next frontier in technology in many ways. You know, many of us are focused on artificial intelligence or quantum. Well, those manifestations are going to move to space. It's clear. You can see the vector. You can see the directions of where this is going to flow. So I say, if you have a passion about space and you're uncertain or you don't know, should I go for it? Just go for it, right? That's the first thing I have to say. Get a taste of it, try, fail, succeed, right? It's a part of life. But to be even more specific, the Landolt mission sits under the Pioneers program, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the specific goals of that program is to train the next generations of scientists, engineers, but not just project managers, different types of talent. And in fact, the program, when they select the missions, they take that into consideration. So I would say if you live in Virginia State and you want to be a part of the ecosystem, or you want to join or try to understand how you can work with the Landolt mission, go to the website, make a first step. Try to figure out what do we need, what we don't need, if you're interested in science. If you're interested in something else, then find your own company or your own niche and just go for it. This is the time to explore. We need smart people of all types and characters, and we could benefit. The U.S. as a whole could benefit from having more people stepping into this new challenge that is coming towards us as we move forward.
And I think that's one of the principal ideas around the establishment of the George Mason University Space Innovation Center, GMUSIC. The whole idea of establishing a Space Innovation Center is putting a marker down that says we are going to put resources and a lot of energy, talent, and collaborations, like with NASA, to say that we are going to lead as a university. We are going to try to lead in developing particularly the talent, as well as the technical. You were talking about the development of the technical things. You know, we're a research university, and when we develop things, having patents, for instance, patenting the discoveries is becoming, in my perspective, increasingly more important for universities to have a role in actually developing the things that are used.
Yes. So I've noticed working with GMU a few very interesting and smart things they did. One of them would be the entire center is multidisciplinary in the way that it kind of crosses the spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, the development of students and like the next generation of talent. On the other side of the spectrum, you can see like all the way up to policy. And then in between, Center for Specific Excellence in Science, so astrophysics and space sciences. But then in between, you see other initiatives, and each one of them is facing a different facet of the new space frontier that is kind of moving towards us. So that was a really good, or in my opinion, a strong step to take forward. I think even more than just a good step, kind of seeing the future and what is to come. So I think on that perspective, I'm very happy to see that happening. It also contributing the Landolt mission a lot. It means that all that talent is sitting on site, and that's important for us because we need to be able to take that brain power, whether you are in a program management position or you're doing procurement, which sounds not related to space, but...
procurement, like I didn't even know procurement, and now I'm like, procurement is the foundation to everything, is understanding how it works.
Yeah. Some people used to say in the past, people who don't understand logistic say strategy, right?
Right.
It is true to this day. If I have to tell you that in order to fly a space mission, you need to be able to procure your parts from the one that has the longest amount of time to be ordered, and some of the items are like 2 years into the future. If you don't have a good program manager, you don't have a good procurement system, you don't have your team working together like a clock to build anything else, like a ship, like a... it's not going to work. So we are very fortunate to have that environment to support the mission. So I'm excited.
But that is not the conversation I think that we're having with students as they decide what course of study they're going to invest in a university, where we are not necessarily saying science needs procurement and logistics specialists, and this is a field where there is real opportunity and it requires a high level of skill, and it's a great investment for you to do this within this industry, to do these specific things. In my world, we are not having that conversation with young people trying to decide what course of study they're going to take.
Well, I think it's about time, right? Because as we see again, this, not just space sciences, but the entire space, I call it frontier, technology, power, compute, like all the different substructures that are the ensemble of space, all need good people in order to make sure that they sustain and move forward.
Well, you bring up something, we talk about quantum computing, we talk about AI, and it seems so nebulous. AI is nebulous, it's in everything, but it's hard for people to wrap their minds around something that's non-specific. Like, but tell me what the jobs are. Tell me what I need to know to be a highly skilled person. And I think that's what we are coming to here. Don't be put off by quantum computing. That is something that will but you're not going to be necessarily a quantum computing major. Like, you don't have to major in that. What you have to do is understand how that is going to be part of whatever industry or course of study you are taking. It will be a factor, AI and quantum.
And I would even go a step further than that. And I would say we are already seeing how traditional education is changing and shifting with time as time moves forward. And I notice more and more that we tend to hire to jobs people not just based on, oh, you studied a specific X, that does not suit space. In fact, we're seeing more and more people moving in program management to help us in space mission program management, and we train them on the job, right? If you have the right construction, the right character, those things go deeper than just education.
It's skill sets. And this is what, when I was talking to students last year at the Schar School, I was saying, I've done a lot of things in my career, but I've learned something in every single job I've ever had, and they are skills. So they're transferable to other things. So when you focus on building your skill set, when you are first to take advantage of the new thing coming over the horizon, when you raise your hand and say, I don't know how to do 100% of that, but I can do 50% of that and learn the other 50%. That's the mindset I think we need, because things are changing so fast.
Yeah, and I would go even a step further. It sounds like we're saying that this is unique to space, but that's true for any industry. They all need all the types and all the kinds and all the different talents that need to come together to make a team, to make a mission succeed, whether it's developing a technology or developing a product. Doesn't matter what the thing of the day is. So I think what's happening is that space has come down to Earth in many ways,
I
right?
love that. Space has come down to Earth. Put that on a bumper sticker. I love that.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It needs to be, I just feel like it needs to be more accessible to more people. instead of thinking it's something that is not related to me, or it's not something that's for me. We need to say, no, space has come down to Earth, and we need people here to figure out how we're going to take the next steps. And because things are changing so quickly, that the leaps forward, it seems to me as a novice, that they're enormous. How do we get to quantum computing? I asked a question about what is quantum computing going to mean for blockchain? And somebody was like, it's going to blow it up. I'm like, I'm just understanding blockchain, and you're just telling me it got blown up by quantum computing. That seems so fast. How do we keep up with that?
I mean, I would say the first thing when we talk about the need is take a leap forward, right? If you're all passionate about this field, if you do care about the next frontier in science, or the next frontier in human exploration, or you care about the next frontier in an industry of interest.
Like
then,
energy.
Whatever.
Like energy, because energy is the thing that we are struggling with on planet Earth.
Yeah, all information industry, right? There are different types of information industries. Whatever it is, the thing that makes you move from the inside, that ties to space, take the first step. You might find that there is a way to do that. So I encourage the robustness of the space workforce for sure. But no less important is, as I said earlier, it's more about building yourself, building your skill set. It doesn't matter if you worked in aviation, civil aviation, and then moved to be a project manager on a space mission, and then the day after that became a project manager on something else. The need exists across industries. So I'm excited to see George Mason taking the...
And it's not just young people, because veterans who have military experience, this is something that maybe they should consider, that they've got transferable skills. And if they have the interest, this space industry needs them too.
Yeah, I'm actually super excited. There's an initiative led by Professor Farah at George Mason University, which is called NOVA, that helps integrate veterans into the space workforce. I think it's in a collaboration with the state of Virginia, and it's submitted to NASA. So it's a potential way to do things. So here is another example of how the space frontier is suddenly taking people with amazing skill sets that they brought from service back into the public sphere and space, and help us achieve our national goals.
Right. You're opening another door. You're opening another window.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank you for being with us. This has been illuminating, Dr. Peretz, and I look forward to getting more updates on the Landolt project and the mission. And I hope that you attract a lot of people who are knocking on your door to say they want to be a part of it. So join us after the break. We will continue to explore what we are doing with George Mason University and our foray into the space industry.
What to expect when you're expecting a teenager.
Hey guys, today we're talking about how to wake up your teen, and this works literally every time.
Give kisses. Give kisses. Look. Give kisses. Give kisses. You heard how loud that was.
I know,
I heard that.
It wasn't you.
Yeah.
It was the...
Is that bacon?
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Bacon.
There. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy. What do you call a pig that knows karate? Pork chop.
Why was the basketball court all wet?
Why?
Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Can I tell you another one? So how does a tissue dance? Put a little boogie on it.
What's Beethoven's favorite fruit? Banana. What is a boxer's favorite drink? Fruit punch.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me in this segment is a familiar face, Dr. Hina Kazmi, who I've interviewed before on this show. And thank you so much for being here. We kicked off a series a year ago, which is hard to believe, when we talked about space policy. And in that intervening time, you have done 2 specials here in the studio, bringing all kinds of experts in to talk about the many aspects and facets of what it means to be a player in the space industry. And since that time, there has been the Grand Challenge Initiative, and now we're looking at the establishment of a Space Innovation Center. So all that happened in a year. And we are looking forward to getting your perspective on what happened since the last time we spoke to you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I do want to start out by saying thank you for first bringing me to the studio. And when we talked about space policy, when I was introducing the new course at George Mason, as a Schar School of Policy, that was last fall to 25. And since then, I've been involved in helping to establish this new innovation center, G-Music. I love the acronym. And they're just exciting stuff going on. I'll really say, and we'll get into the details of it later in the show, but really, Catherine, the year since last 2025, I had to teach this class now. 1 year is like a dog year. Right. So much has happened. It's like a 7 years worth of human history. Time is because it's so fast. We're moving fast. Industry is moving fast. It's growing, expanding in just enormous rate. And that is why, why we touched on some of these. So the 4-part series that we did. So we have done 3 segments, and this is the 4th one, where we really looked at some pieces of the space ecosystem. We looked at the research aspects. We talked about energy. And as we were preparing to do that episode, data centers in space became the headline news. So we touched on that in that episode. And the last show we did was really what I want to get to here is space policy and law. With all the things happening, exciting stuff happening, and Dr. Peretz really did a good job of laying out kind of all the various aspects of space technology that are seeping into our lives. And then, so we need to now step back and say, okay, well, where is this all headed? And what are the regulations and policies, something that you and I touched on in our first interview. So really exciting time. And I do want to say I'm really excited to be part of the proposal work that the team led from College of Science and College of School of Engineering to help establish this G-Music, the Space Center. I want to pick up on something where Dr. Peretz left off about the workforce development, who's at the table and the students, you mentioned that. So education is one of the 5 pillars of this new center. So there are 5 key pillars that we want to focus on for this new innovation center. One is space missions, like the Landolt mission. And Eliad already mentioned about, setting up the infrastructure at the university to build a next set of missions after Landolt is launched. So we are focused on space missions. We're focused on, of course, research, scientific research, right? Obviously. And then policy and law, and that's where Schar School, a College of Business. So not just law and policy, but really economics, space economy is a big factor now. So bringing in College of Business into the fold. So Space Institute will really focus on those cross-disciplinary aspects. And then education. So we're looking at actively master's program in aerospace engineering. So I'm an engineer by training, so I automatically talk about that. But really, certificate program perhaps in space, understanding space economy, MBA in space economy, project management. How do you build the mission? Really teaching students what it takes to build, test, and launch these missions. So whole host of disciplines that we can bring to the university, and education is absolutely one of those pillars. And the last pillar, 5th pillar, is outreach. So outreach to public, outreach to government on space, on the space sector. So we want to collaborate with the industry and the partnership with government and really expand that messaging about how significant space sector is now. So those are all the dynamics of the Space Center that we're looking forward to establish.
Well, it's interesting when we were talking about students, and I'm a very veteran graduate. I graduated from George Mason in 1984. But when it was no more as a commuter school, we had a lot of adult students who came to get degrees at George Mason, either to complete their degree or to get a master's degree. But one of the things I think we need to talk about are who are the students who are going to look for education, advanced degrees, or certifications to move from the industry they're in now to this industry that is desperate for people who have skills. So when we talk about students, we're not necessarily talking about 20-somethings. We're actually talking about, because George Mason is placed in Northern Virginia in proximity to D.C. and to this industry. So what are the opportunities, really? We talked about veterans a little bit. Who are our students? Not just necessarily young people, but people saying, I want to move into this industry, and what is my path?
Yeah, really good question. And that, I will say, early career, mid-career, government contractors. We are in the DC metro area. I've been a government contractor in my past life, and I've been in government. So government civil servants also are absolutely, they're students. So when we teach, I teach master's program classes, and the student population is from who have just come from undergrad directly into a master's program, or are earlier mid-career who are working professionals and taking master's classes in the evening. So it is wide open to all professions and all disciplines, and really working adults too, not just the.
And this is the thing about disruption is normal. We've had a lot of changes in the federal government, and so there are a lot of people whose jobs just don't exist anymore. The jobs aren't there. And so when people think about what is next, the fact that George Mason University is a research university, it's a state school, it is in a collaboration with NASA, and we have programs to say, don't discount yourself. Dr. Peretz and I were talking about the people who say, I can't do that, I'm not a scientist. But we need people of all skills. We need people of all backgrounds. And so it seems to me part of the outreach for the university would be well served to say, this could be your next career, and the school is prepared to work with you as a student no matter what age you are.
Yeah, exactly. And George Mason, it has so many disciplines, and they can all tie into the space sector if you want to be part of it. And that kind of takes me to where we are in the space economy and the space sector. It truly is that, I guess that we cannot just think of space as just space sector itself. It is like, thinking of, the satellites and the space infrastructure, broadband satellites, where we get our Wi-Fi, now direct-to-device. So satellites direct to connection to our devices is just starting. We're at the beginning phases of it, and it's just going to be the norm. And so what that means is that space as satellites, as infrastructure is here. We're already there.
Right.
And now what we're talking about is how do we scale up? How do we operationalize? And in that sense is the industry saying, okay, how do we make it seamless so there's interoperability across different types of systems? So whether it's broadband satellites, whether it's remote sensing satellites, whether it's GPS constellation, how do we make them all interoperable? Because they're just part of everything we do without, they're transparent because they are in space, but really we're engaging with space infrastructure on a daily basis. So you don't need to be just a space geek like myself, or like as a scientist like Eliad, but it really can be in any disciplines. And here's what's really interesting now. And when I teach this class next time, here's what I will focus on, something that now, we can talk about different space applications, right? So for remote sensing, GP, all the applications we talk about, but it really is more than that now. We are now in academia researchers are looking at it as a holistic. So if industry is saying, hey, we want to make it, we really want to talk about operationalizing seamless, making more efficient, be able to launch, like it's almost like an air traffic management system. Like we want to just show up at the launch pad and launch, just like airplanes take off from the airport gates. Really, they're talking about getting to that scale. So what that means is that researchers, social scientists, hard scientists are saying, okay, well, are we now looking at the speed at which that we're launching satellites and launching assets in low Earth orbit, what is the impact? And what that means is environmental impact, ethics and public policy is becoming a big question. Like, who is being left out? You talked about who's at the table, not just in the student training workforce, but really globally. So we are now starting to look at a what I call a system level as understanding of the space sector, space economy, its role in our day-to-day lives. And now the scholars are really saying it's not just about this app or that app, it's about space weather, impact of space weather on, meaning the solar flares impact our communication satellites. So how do we create models that predict those weather events so we can really preemptively prepare for that, because critical infrastructure means we cannot lose connection with those satellites or communication. So really that's where we're at now.
And it's amazing because things, like I said, 100 years ago, no one could have imagined this. 100 years is really not a long time.
5 years ago, we didn't think.
Right. But 100 years ago, we just never imagined this. And now we're talking about data centers. Energy and data centers are two of the things that in your previous specials that you talked about. And data centers in our real life world, people are talking about this. It's a huge public policy issue. Energy, fragile electric grid, all of this impacts our lives today where we live in Northern Virginia. And now we're talking about how is space a response, an answer, a solution. And so we need to keep in mind that as we struggle to make decisions on a day-to-day basis, we need to also keep an eye on the fact that the solution may be out in space, and we need to get there quicker and more efficiently to solve the problems we're struggling with now.
And let's talk about the data centers, right? We in Virginia really understand that better than most states. But data centers are becoming like this political hot potato now, and it's showing up as a factor in the primaries and the upcoming elections. And so let's parse that out, right? So maybe the timing is right where the industry folks are saying, okay, we need to get off the terra firma and go in space, and they're components of it. And guess what? This is just a few months old news almost, and industry is actually taking action towards it.
And this is why we're going to come back from this break and talk further about it, because Dr. Kazmi has hit upon something, which is data centers are very much in the headlines. They're very much in the political campaigns, and they are very much at the forefront of environmental policy and energy policy, and people in neighborhoods going, I don't want them next to my neighborhood. And so we have to talk about what we're facing real world and how space can be the answer for solving some of these really difficult problems. So join.
STEM is the discipline of hard numbers, precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to get messy or just mess it up. Dare to program something internet-breaking, record-breaking. Dare to blow their minds. Dare to try. Dare to fail. Dare to keep daring. Science! Dare to learn the difference between organic, sedimentary, and non-foliated metamorphic rock. Get outside. Find those rocks. Dare to be homeroom famous, a high school fable. Dare to send those old STEM theories flying past the neighbor's house into outer space. And for the love of STEM, dare bigger. Dare to code. Dare to invent. Dare to explore. Dare to STEM. Check out She Can STEM to get started.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Get it.
Give your town a reason to celebrate, because every Goodwill item you bring home brings job training and more to your community. Goodwill, bring good home.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight is Dr. Hina Kazmi of George Mason University Schar School. We are talking about space, and we need to think about space differently. We've touched on some very specific things, but strategically, we need to develop an infrastructure about how we are going to even approach the study and the operationalization and the development of industry in space.
Yeah.
How do we approach that?
So somewhat incrementally, which sounds opposite of what I just started saying, that we're moving very fast, but it is happening piece by piece. And what I mean now, these pieces are moving fast, but here's what I mean, like coming back to our conversation about data centers before the break. So here's what's happening now. And this is, again, since last time you and I met, this has now become a real prominent, which is when we talk about data centers, right? We're not necessarily right away talking about putting all the racks of data and petabytes of data in space. What we're talking about, when we say data center, there are three components to data center. It is the storage of the data. It's the connectivity, so be able to access that data. And then it's the compute system, so cloud computing, right? So all these are the three kind of pieces of data centers. And what the industry is doing now is starting to test out compute systems. In other words, taking dedicated satellite systems in low Earth orbit or wherever and really connecting them to, let's say, remote sensing satellites and allowing the artificial intelligence AI to help do in-orbit compute. So taking away that load, that data, energy load from the ground-based data centers to in-orbit capability. This is brand new. This is not an infrastructure that exists yet, but this is where we're headed. Having really this architecture in space rather than on ground. So having this onboard in space compute capabilities. Now, what does that mean for you and I or the end users in general? What it means is that right now I am the end user. Let's say I'm a farmer and I want to just real time understand just my crops, health of my crops. So I ask for select data, select images from whatever service I'm getting for Earth observation satellite. Now, what these compute systems intend to do is they actually will make those decisions using AI capability in space. So right now, what the industry argues is that they are able to transmit perhaps 20% of the images to end users compared to what the satellites are capable of doing, because the download of the raw data, processing it and uploading it is taking too much time. But if they can have in-orbit compute systems, meaning the supporting satellite systems, then they can do this immense amount of data computation, make those AI kind of decisions, and download the data that the end user actually needs to have that AI agent intelligence in these supporting infrastructure, satellite system constellation. So we're talking about a whole other layer of, when we talk about space-based infrastructure, now this is a supporting infrastructure for that infrastructure. So we're just multiplying in a way. And we're at the initial stages of it, but a year from now, if you and I are talking,
I know. Look how
we will be talking about those constellations.
We will.
Yeah,
we will.
So I think we're moving fast, and here's where I will come back to my original passion of this series that we did on space policy and why we need to teach this in schools, is that we really, our policies have to be, stakes are high. And what I mean by that is the U.S. is the leader in a lot of these, when we talk about terms and interoperability standards, the technical standards. Earlier I mentioned about space traffic management really being comparable to air traffic management. Right. Now, the U.S. is the leader and really sets those standards. For us to stay a leader, what it means is that now we have a lot of other nations. So there are about 108 some nations are actively called spacefaring nation, meaning they have a seat at the table. They are members of the UN outer space treaties. So what we need domestically is really, it's time for us to focus on a long-term strategic, cohesive policy on space. Up to now, our space policies and really have shifted based on the administration, and politics have played a great role in the space policy, domestic national space policy, whether it's for defense, for civil or commercial. And we're at the stages where we really need to be seriously considering what I say, politics are not local in the space sector. No,
they need to be long-term committed goals that are part of what the nation has decided is a priority.
And they are holistic, right? So they have to be very strategic, and we need to stick to some sort of a cohesive plan, meaning speaking from one voice of some sort.
Right.
We don't have that body yet nationally or even internationally. We don't have a place where we look to say, okay, here's where we go and talk about space policy and its role as critical infrastructure in all other neighboring sectors and industry, how it impacts us, and so all the pieces of it, and that's really where we are. Now, the other thing I would say is it's not just, I don't want to put all this burden on us, on the U.S., it really is the international bodies. So given the number of nation states now called spacefaring nations, I had Professor Michelle Hemlin in the last episode. We talked about international law. And one thing she made clear, she said, okay, we're probably not going to have a treaty. Now, treaties are what international laws are. So far, we have 5 treaties in the books. And they determine about our what orbital slots to launch things in spectrum management, what frequency can certain services be used at. Very, I would say, specific to applications. And now what we're talking about is that even the UN needs to step back and say, okay, well, as a whole, how is this working? So if we are concerned about the environmental impact, environmental degradation, because thousands and thousands, up to 1 million satellites can be orbiting in low Earth orbit and burning back up in the upper atmosphere, well, do we need to set some standards of what this material should be? How do we minimize environmental impact, right? So, but these are the kind of standards that international bodies need to set. And what they're doing is we have lost, I know my regulations to launch my individual satellites, but as a system, we're not really there. And this is where I will break my own, one of my principles, and I'll give you my opinion, is that I think international bodies are really falling behind. And I really don't see a reason why we cannot come together. And there are a lot of working groups. I should say that there are a lot of working groups at the UN level. But the question is, can we agree on some minimal standards as a full system, and agree to some norms or new norms?
So do you see something like the World Health Organization, which has tried to manage healthcare globally? Do you see something emerging that is like that, an international organization to which there are member nations and they work as a body? I mean, even apart from NATO, because NATO has its role and has always had its role, but can you see an emerging organization like the World Health Organization?
You're absolutely right. That's actually a really good example. I do believe we're not there yet. We are not quite there. We're still in this mindset of race. So, we talked about race with China. Now, because China is our absolutely formidable competitor with the U.S. in the space sector, and they're moving very fast. To give you an example how fast they're moving, last time you and I talked, we had 2024 reports. They had invested private investment in the space economy in China. It's really a government-led space program in China. It was about $500 million. What the reports estimate is they went 4 times that much the following year, and they are seeing the value of the economic investment, and so the industry will show up as long as they have the institutional capacity, and China will open up that door. The moment they open that door for commercial investments, it will just go very fast. So we have competitors. So what I mean is that we still talk about, and not we just the U.S., but really politically, the space race, right? Are we going to get to the moon first, or somebody's going to get to the moon first? And really, I would say the U.S. is still far ahead, right? As far as economic investments, private sector investment in the commercial space startups, we're well ahead. We're about more than half of the startups happen in the U.S. So we're comfortably leading that effort. But where I think we need to be now is not thinking about a race, but being the leader and setting those norms and standards and influence.
I agree, because here's the thing. We are all inhabitants of the same planet. So to talk about the environmental impact, if you don't set standards, like World Health Organization trying to keep pandemics and outbreaks of things that could kill huge populations, which is why we have them, we have to protect the planet, whatever we do in space. So it seems to me that having an organization that says we can compete, but we have to set standards so we don't actually adversely impact the planet we all share. Just a thought. We've got 2 minutes left, and so you've got 2 minutes to say what you want to say.
Thank you so much. I do, first of all, want to say that this was a great opportunity to have this series and really touch on the very basics of all the various components of the large space ecosystem. What outgoing message I will leave you with and the audience with is that it is indeed changing. We are at this immense time of change in the world, and space sector is absolutely part of that. To kind of summarize the kind of this spirit, I want to leave you with this quotation from a movie. It's called Let Them All Talk. The movie came out in 2020. It's the Meryl Streep, Candace Bergen, Diane Weiss. These are all the veterans actresses, and they are college friends, and they're on a cruise ship just reconnecting after many years. And they're having an argument in which Diane Weiss' character stops the argument and says, and this is what I want to read to you. She said, Elon Musk sent many, many telecom satellites into the sky that look exactly like stars. So now when humans gaze at the night sky, they won't know if they're gazing at a star or at a machine. And we at this table, at this little table, we are among the last ones, very last ever to have seen the actual real, the honest, truthful night sky from the ocean. We saw just stars, only stars.
That is amazing to think how the world has changed, how space has changed, and how we have to learn to live in this new world. So I want to thank you again. It has been inspirational. I'm so glad that we met. I'm glad you did that first class, which was open to the whole university. I hope that you continue to do classes that are open to the whole university so that you are inspiring people, no matter what course of study they are in, to consider space and their role in it. So thank you, and I hope you will be back to the studio to do more specials.
Thank you, Captain.
And that has been it for Inside Scoop.